Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 623. And today's date is March 23rd, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government Preparing for the Economic Collapse with Massive Military Drills in the United States. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Greece and the ECB, they're continually having meetings discussing the debt problem. And we can see that Greece does not want to pay all of this debt. They want to write some of it off to help the people in the country. Now they're dealing with Russia, they're meeting with Russia, and they're looking to maybe exit the Eurozone at this point. And Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras warned German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Monday of the country's inability to repay its debt in the coming weeks without financial help from the European Union. He wrote a letter, and Tsipras criticized the Eurozone minister in its refusal to issue short-term debt to Greece before Athens adopts a new round of economic reforms. Given that Greece has no access to money markets, and also in view of the spikes in our debt repayment obligations during the spring and summer, it ought to be clear that the ECB's special restrictions, when combined with the disbursement delays, would make it impossible for any government to service its debt. And this is coming from Tsipras. And I have to agree, the ECB is making it very, very difficult. And as we can see throughout the Eurozone, with France and Italy, Portugal, Cyprus, they are continually making it very difficult for every single one of these countries, because these countries are placing or imposing austerity on their people, and every time they get a tranche of more and more debt, none of this money goes to the people whatsoever. It goes directly to the banking system, and it bypasses the people. So all this debt and all these additional loans don't help the people whatsoever. Actually, the people are suffering from all of this, and it is impossible to sustain this debt and to pay it back. I mean, the United States has something a little bit different here. They have the ability to continually create money, but again, all this creation of all this money is not helping the people whatsoever. Look at Detroit. Look at the many cities here in the United States. Look at the infrastructure. Look at what's been going on. There's no money coming back into the United States. Most of the money is now going out to other nations or to pay for war and to order new military assets to help push the next war to cover up this entire collapse. Now, here in the United States, we see that the entire economy is imploding. And each day we report on this, things are getting worse and worse. They're not improving like they continually say. I remember back in August of 2013 when they told us the real estate industry was completely recovering. We're on the road to a fantastic recovery. I mean, Obama was even out there giving a speech in Phoenix. And since that time, we have seen absolutely no recovery. You know what we've seen? We've seen bubbles being inflated. We see an illusionary real estate market which cannot be sustained. We have seen draconian programs being implemented to bring more and more of the subprime people in to continually push this bubble larger and larger. But we have not seen an improvement. Actually, all we see are things that are getting worse in real estate, in retail, in the unemployment situation. And we can see as we go forward, even with these new programs, it's continually getting worse. I mean, following January's disastrous dive in existing home sales, February saw a 4-month of missed expectations with about 4.88 million print against a 4.9. Perhaps more worrisome is the National Association of Realtors, Larry Young, noting unsuitable price levels as a reason for weak sales due to low inventories. Well, inventories have been going up. In February, they increased by 1.6%. Well, of course, what they do is they blame it on the weather. They'll blame it on many other things. And when I look around the country, I definitely see prices continually coming down. I see many people who have their homes on the market reducing their prices. They're not getting the traffic that they used to get to. And we saw this back in 2007 going into 2008, where traffic all of a sudden dried up. All these people were selling their homes. A lot of people decided to take their homes off the market, but other people decided to continually try to sell it, and they had to continually reduce and reduce and reduce to find that area where people would actually pay for that house. And we're seeing the same thing happen right now. And again, we have to remember, all of this was built up on the Fed giving easy money to investment companies, hedge funds, and they're the ones who paid cash for all these homes to push and to pump up this bubble. Their plan was to basically pump up the bubble, make people believe that the real estate market was improving, that we were in this recovery. Prices were going up because, of course, the banks were told to hold back on all the foreclosures. Those investment companies, hedge funds that were purchasing the houses in cash were told not to sell them, but to keep them, try to rent them out if they could. And they're hoping that people would just flock to the real estate market once again and purchase these homes. But this didn't happen whatsoever. And now we're starting to see that this cannot be sustained. It cannot be maintained for much, much longer. And this is why we're seeing these new programs with 0% down, we'll pay for your closing costs. And again, it is not working out at this point. The American people are tapped out. The unemployment rate is much, much worse than they're talking about. It is not 5.5%. We're closer to 30%. And we have to remember, they're doing this to keep everyone in the dark and keep everyone convinced that everything is fine until the very last minute, where they can blame it on another country or group. And they can say, see, we brought you in this, we brought this recovery to every single one of you. We did what we had to do. And this country, this other group or whoever brought the system down. Of course, it's going to be Russia, China, the Islamic State, Syria, Iran, Brazil, Venezuela, you name it. The players are always the same. And we can see through manufacturing and from retail that things are not getting better. I mean, the Baltic Dry Index is around 594 points right now. It's creeping up a little bit. But we have to remember, if we look back 1 year ago when unemployment was higher, where that means people were out of work, because they're telling us now that, oh, most of America is back to work and they're working fine. This is why all these stores are closing. This is why people are being laid off. The Baltic Dry Index back in that time, March 23rd, 2014, was at 1578. Does this make any sense to anybody? Because if it was true that everything was fine and we're really at 5.5%, we would see retail expanding. We would see people saying, I feel secure in my job. I can go out and I can purchase a home, a car. I'm going to go get that HD TV. I'm going to go get that Blu-ray player. I'm going to buy a new computer. But we're not seeing this whatsoever. And since people aren't purchasing, the factory orders are not there. They don't need the raw materials to create the products to sell in the stores. And this is why a lot of retail outlets are closing or limiting the amount of stores and laying off thousands upon thousands of people. I mean, we're already seeing, and this is coming from the Chicago Fed National Activity Indicator, they revised it drastically lower to negative 0.1. And now February came in at negative 0.11. They were expecting it to be a positive 0.1. The Fed National Activity Indicator indicates a third month of below-trend growth for the first time since 2011. We are headed for a major, major collapse. And the rest of the world is starting to figure this out. They're starting to realize that, the dollar, it's dying. The United States is collapsing. I mean, we know a lot of the allies have been looking at the Chinese Development Bank and saying, you know something, we better protect ourselves. Let's sign on to this. Even the IMF is looking and saying, you know something, they're going to join the China-led Asian infrastructure, the investment bank. Christine Lagarde says her institution not only sees a massive opportunity for cooperation with the bank, but it also delighted to explore the possibilities. Right now, the Chinese Development Bank, it's expected to exceed about 35 countries at the end of this month. What does this tell you? Everyone sees the writing on the wall. They know that this system, the private Western Central Bank system, is collapsing, and they're shifting away from the United States. But don't worry. We reported this back a couple days ago where the United States would have three options: to join the Chinese-led development bank, do nothing, or convince the allies and put pressure on them not to join. Well, they tried the pressure part. It didn't work. They're not sitting back doing nothing. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to try to weasel their way into the system and maybe try to change things up a little bit. Of course, they're making it sound like, no, we're all for this. We're for the Chinese-led infrastructure bank. We want this. The Obama administration, facing defiance by allies that have signed up to support the new bank, is proposing the bank work in a partnership with Washington. So what they're saying right now is, you know what? We're not going to join. We want to partner up with you. And this is the best part. The Obama administration wants to use existing development banks to co-finance projects with Beijing's new organization. Indirect support would help the U.S. address another long-standing goal, ensuring the new institution standards are designed to prevent unhealthy debt buildups. And remember what I tell you. Every time a government official comes out there and tells you something, it's always the opposite. When he's telling you that they want to address the unhealthy debt buildups, what they're saying is, we want to switch this bank into pushing debt out to more and more of these countries. They also want to help with the human rights abuses and environmental risks. So basically, the U.S. strategy is an attempt to bring the Chinese Development Bank into the fold of the U.S.-dominated multinational institutions. Basically, they're trying to take it over. They want to work with it, but really what they're doing right now is they're trying to take that bank and maneuver it into the private Western central banking system. They're not really helping the situation. They're helping themselves once again. And we can see this is exactly what they're trying to do. But I think the BRIC system, I think they're wise to this. I think they know what's going on, and they will eventually be stopped. This will not go anywhere except to war. Now, Russia is ready to ratify a science, innovation, and technology cooperation pact prepared by the 5 BRICS nations. BRIC countries led by China are looking to offer incentives to nudge domestic companies to shift from low-value, low-cost manufacturing to fostering innovation. And we can see the BRIC system right now is looking out at the world, and they're making deals looking to bring business in. Russia is also making deals in South America, in Brazil, just like China is making deals in Venezuela. We see that Power Machines, Russia's largest power plant engineering company, acquired 51% share of Brazilian engineering firm Pfizer in a move to strengthen its presence in Latin American countries. Power Machines has an international experience in the field of design, manufacture, and complete delivery of the equipment for thermal, nuclear, hydraulic, and gas turbine power plants. And as we can see, Russia, China, they're making deals all around the world, trying to spur economic growth to help out each one of these countries, while the United States is plotting regime change, using military to gain control of a country. And we can see that the BRIC system is a new system which is trying to spur economic growth, and we can see the United States system, the private Western Central Bank system, is a dying system, and the only way to protect a dying system is with military and regime change, and this is exactly what's going on. right now. And we can see throughout Europe, countries under the private Western central bank system, they are suffering. And there are protests out there where they're saying enough is enough. Spain, they're out there and they're protesting austerity. And they're saying that the situation in Spain is deteriorating as the money it got from the Europe went to bailing out banks, which continued to foreclose on homes. But they does not help the everyday person. And they've gathered together and they were protesting in Madrid, and they're saying we are done with this system. And we're seeing this pop up in all different countries, in France, in Italy, in Greece, in Cyprus. The people are not benefiting from what is going on. Actually, they're suffering from what is going on. And we're going to see more and more protests occur as time goes on. Now, we all understand how I feel about Obamacare. This was not to help the people, just like these debt loans to all these countries was not to help the people there. It's to help the corporations, the banking systems, and everyone else. We see Obamacare doing the same thing, where Obamacare was to help the insurance companies, to help bring in revenue to the government. It wasn't really to give benefits to the people. Because if you're truly giving a true benefit to the people, you don't have to add a penalty onto it to force people into something. People would flock to it because they would make the choice and say, yes, this works for me. This is a great product. I'm going to join up. But again, Obamacare is not a great product. It is a product to enslave you in health insurance and to continually keep you in this system and continually having you pay in as the prices continually go up. And if you don't like it, doesn't matter. We're still going to get your money by penalizing you. The Obama administration is now going around saying that the Obamacare enrollment figures is fantastic. It's a success. But when we take a closer look, it reveals that it isn't nearly as successful as anticipated. According to the survey, 57% of the uninsured said the penalty is less expensive for them than the coverage. 31% said they didn't need health insurance anyway, while 26% said they like to have it but prefer to pay the penalty because it's cheaper. So when we look at this, we see that, you know what? The Affordable Care Act is too expensive for people to get into it. And right now they're saying, listen, it doesn't really matter at this point because I'm stuck in the same situation. If I truly wanted health insurance, I didn't need Obamacare. I would have gotten it on my own, but it was expensive. Now that there's Obamacare, it's still expensive, but now I have to pay a penalty. So it really didn't help all those people stuck in the middle here who weren't getting the subsidies. And we can see right now that all of these people who are out of Obamacare, they're just taking the tax penalty because it's a lot less money than paying $500, $600, $700 a month. So this is not a success. This is a grab for your money, to bring in as much as they possibly can to make the insurance companies wealthy and to bring in revenue to the government. Because you have to remember, the insurance companies wrote Obamacare. Now, NATO has announced that it is launching an information war against Russia. The UK publicly announced a battalion of keyboard warriors to spread disinformation. And it's well documented that the West has long used false propaganda to sway public opinion. You have to remember Amendment 114, Section 501 of the NDAA back in 2012. The United States can use propaganda on its own people. Such manipulations includes flooding social media with comments supporting the government and large corporations, fake social media identities. One of America's top cyber propagandists, former high-level military information officer Joel Harding, wrote in December, I was in a discussion today about information being used in social media as a possible weapon. The people I was talking with have a tool which scrapes social media sites, gauges their sentiment, and gives the user opportunity to automatically generate a persuasive response. Their tool is called a social network influence engine. Gizmo reported back in 2010, software developer Nigel Leck got tired rehashing the same 140-character argument against climate change deniers, so he programmed a bot that does the work for him. Every 5 minutes, it trawls Twitter for terms and phrases that commonly crop up in tweets that refute human-caused climate change. It then searches its database and hundreds to find a counter-argument best suited for the tweet. An article that includes the words Russia or Ukraine automatically trigger comments accusing Russia of seeking to form a new empire, Putin of being the new Hitler, and the Russians invading and being responsible for all the violence in Ukraine. Any article including the words NSA spying or mass surveillance automatically triggers comments saying that the government is just trying to keep us safe, and anyone who questions their actions is a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist who lives in his mom's basement. So basically what's happening here is they no longer need the living human being to counter the argument on all of these sites like on YouTube, Facebook. They use software to create different accounts by the hundreds, by the thousands, and then they use these accounts using a bot to go ahead and take from a huge database of sayings to come back and basically try to give an argument to what is going on. And this is why we see this continually happening. I notice all these accounts that are created are usually created like between 2009 and 2012. They have no other videos, no anything else linking to them. It's just a single account created with absolutely nothing, and they make a one-time post or two posts, and that is it. So we can see right now they're pushing this propaganda war as hard as they possibly can. Now, many countries now are looking at Chinese arms. Chinese-made advanced weapon systems are now flooding the international market, and over the next 10 years will cause instability and make it a lot harder for the U.S. to intervene in these countries, because these countries are looking at the military assets from China. They might not be as good as the United States or Russia's military assets, but they're cheaper, and a lot of these countries are looking at this saying, you know something, we rather spend less money for almost the same thing, and they're going ahead and doing this. We see China's shift from small arms to advanced weapon systems is proven by the sale of drones to Africa and the Middle East in 2011, a contract to supply 3 frigates to Algeria in 2012, and Turkey's surprise choice of a Chinese air and missile defense system over US, Russia, and EU offerings a year later. Chinese weapon systems are often much cheaper, but again, you get what you pay for. They're getting something at a reduced price, and the weapons are almost as good as the United States and Russia. And as time goes on, these weapons will get better and better and better. Now, we see out in Japan, we understand that the United States is trying to move their base to a different location in Okinawa, and they want to do this because this will allow them to bring in more sophisticated weapons into this region, because as we know, the United States government central bankers are encircling China, keeping them contained. And Okinawa's governor ordered a halt to an underwater survey needed for the reclamation of land for a new $8.6 billion base, which would host U.S. troops. And the governor is keeping his word. He's saying if he was elected, he was going to stop the United States from placing a base in his town. And right now we can see this is exactly what's going on. Now, there was a U.S. Marine who was filming in Okinawa, and he kind of leaked it to YouTube, showing what was going on there, how people didn't want it. And of course, as you know, the U.S. government central bankers, they don't want people to see this, because people want the U.S. and their bases everywhere. And we could see the people there do not want the United States there. The leaked film would show the arrest of the Okinawan peace campaigner last month, It was uploaded to YouTube on March 9th, and of course, a lot of this has been taken down already, and the U.S. Marine Corps official was sacked over this because they don't want this type of stuff getting out there. They want people to think that, yes, they want us in here. They want us creating a new base in their area. And we can see right now that, no, the people really don't want this. Going on and looking around the entire globe right now, a lot of the countries are looking at the United States as a bully, pushing their way into each one of these countries. And a lot of the people in these countries are saying, you know what? We really don't want you here at this point in time. But again, the United States needs to do this because the United States government central bankers are pushing war, and they need bases in strategic locations because they realize once this war gets started, they want everything preset and ready to go. Now, we understand in Ukraine there was a coup d'etat. I mean, there was a recording of Victoria Nuland. They spent about $5 billion, and basically they put in the puppet government in Ukraine. And what's very interesting right now is that the Clinton Foundation's deep financial ties to Ukrainian oligarchs pushed for closer ties to EU was revealed. And we can see between 2009 and 2013, including when Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State, the Clinton Foundation received at least $8.6 million from the Viktor Punchuk Foundation, according to that foundation, which is based in Kiev. It was created by Mr. Punchuk, whose fortune stems from a pipe-making company. In 2008, Mr. Punchuk made a 5-year, $29 million commitment to the Clinton Global Initiative, a wing of the foundation that coordinates charitable projects and funding for them but doesn't handle the money. The pledge was to fund a program to train future Ukrainian leaders and professionals to modernize Ukraine, according to the Clinton Foundation. Several alumni are current members of the Ukrainian parliament. The Punchuk Foundation said its donations were intended to help make Ukraine a successful, free, modern country based on European values. It said that Mr. Punchuk was lobbying the State Department about Ukraine. This cannot be seen as anything but a good thing. And we can see, yeah, they were kind of involved in this entire thing. And we see the Clinton's Foundation is kind of involved in many, many different aspects that are going on around the world at this point in time. Now, Ukraine is out there, and they are saying that they will not need Russian gas by April 1st. And they're saying that they're going to get their gas from, most likely, Europe. And we can see right now, they've been planning on this for quite a while. And I don't believe they're going to start the offensive unless they can completely get off the Russian system. And we can see right now they're continually making 7-day prepayments to get the gas into the country. And once they have the gas coming in from some other area and they do not need Russia, and they don't pay Russia off whatsoever because this is what they're planning to do, they are going to start the major offensive. And we heard and reported on that this major offensive is coming in the spring. Now, if they are able to get off of the Russian gas supply by April 1st, we can most likely see an offensive, a major one, occurring this spring. And we can see Ukraine is out there, and Ukraine's Ministry of Information Policy, Yuri Stets, said he wants people who work for the local television in Donetsk and Lugansk to serve 8 to 15 years in prison for lying about what has really been going on in Ukraine. Or do they want them in prison because they were telling the truth of what's really going on? And we can see that Ukraine is not for free speech. They control the situation. They're throwing journalists out of the country. They're barring people from coming into the country. And again, most of the people in the country of Ukraine right now do not agree with what is going on. I mean, Poroshenko even revealed that 30% of Ukrainian conscripts deserted in the early days of the conflict. I'm going to say that number is much higher. I think he's being conservative about the whole thing. Because the people are sitting here going, well, wait a minute. Why are we going after our own people? It makes no sense. And this is why Ukraine had to have paid mercenaries come into the country to help fight the war. And we can see right now, US, UK, they have advisors in there training the Ukrainian army, training their special police forces. And we can see a lot of the oligarchs in Ukraine are looking at the situation, and it seems that they have private armies that are protecting their certain oil production, their certain corporations, and Poroshenko is out there, and he has dispatched 2 battalions of elite National Guard to different areas right now because of the rising tension in the region. And he's saying that there will be no more pocket armies for each governor in each one of these regions. Any regional armed forces must fall in with the national military hierarchy. And he's saying that, no, this has to end right now. You all have to be under my power. But again, the people in Ukraine are looking at this saying, you know something? We need to protect ourselves here. And we're going to have to watch this carefully to see what is going to happen in Ukraine. Now, there's a new OSCE report, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Special monitoring mission said on Saturday it was denied access to an East Ukrainian territory controlled by the Ukraine Armed Forces. They wouldn't let them in there. They wouldn't let them inspect the heavy military asset withdrawal. And this happened on 2 separate instances. And of course, they're stalling. They don't want them to see certain things. This is why they're keeping them out. They stalled them as long as they possibly can. They moved their heavy armament away. Then they let the OSCE people in. And of course, they saw nothing because they were able to keep them out for a specific time. Ukrainian troops stopped the OSCE monitors at the entrance of the city of Mariupol and at a checkpoint near another town. So they're continually doing this, and all they're doing is playing musical chairs and moving the equipment in all different areas so the OSCE doesn't really see what is going on here, and they're trying to keep it as close as they possibly can to the contact line. And we can see right now most of the violations of the Minsk agreement is from the Kiev side. The OSCE reports are discussed at least once a week. Facts that are reported to the OSCE member states show that about 80% of the problematic incidents, such as the failure to abide by the obligations on withdrawing troops or the refusal to allow monitors to reach an area they want to visit, involves the Ukrainian security forces. It happens 80% of the time. Now, again, as we know, Germany, France, United States, and the other European nations, they have sanctions ready to go on Russia or the southeastern people if they don't abide by the Minsk agreement. But what happens when Kiev violates the Minsk agreement 80% of the time? There is no penalty or punishment. Seems a little unfair to me. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand that the governments, the puppet governments, I should say, they are falling apart, and they're just trying to hold on to their power as long as they possibly can. I mean, out in Yemen, what do we see? We see the people there, the rebel fighters, have captured key facilities in Taiz. This is the Yemen's 3rd largest city, including the international airport. They have advanced into the city, which appears to have placed the rebels on a path toward the direct military confrontation with the opposing puppet government led by the President Haiti, who is based in Aden. And this is continually and ongoing, and we can see the United States government, central bankers, the coalition forces. It's making all of them a little bit nervous because each country right now, Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, all of these people are rising up. They want their countries back. They want the central banking system out. They want the U.S. government out. And we can see that the people in Yemen are moving within striking distance of the strategic Bab al-Mandab Strait, a vital corridor through which much of the world's maritime trade passes. Now, this corridor is the narrowest point between the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. And if you control this choke point, you can control what's going back and forth. Now, directly opposite of this is Djibouti, where the United States has a base there. And we understand now why they put the embassy in Djibouti on shut down because they're worried about what is going on in Yemen, which is right across the way. They have security concerns. And we can see that the Yemen foreign minister calls for the Gulf Arab military around the area to come and help, to intervene, to come into the country and push these people out and restore power back to the president. But I don't think this is going to happen. The UN is now getting involved, and the UN Security Council held an emergency session to condemn the actions of the rebels who have taken over all of these different areas. And we can see right now, the puppet government in this country has no power whatsoever. The same thing is happening in Libya. The same thing is happening in Lebanon. And we can see the United States government central bankers are trying to prevent the overthrow of the puppet government in Lebanon. And we can see they're continually sending more and more weapons into this area. A new shipment of U.S. weapons pledged to the Lebanese army is set to arrive in Beirut by the end of this month. Last month, a U.S. weapons shipment arrived to Beirut's port that included about over 70 M198 howitzers, as well as 26 million rounds of ammunition, including small, medium, and heavy artillery rounds. And as of right now, we definitely see that all of this is happening because the people are rising up in each one of these countries. And we understand that military assets are being brought down into Kuwait. We also understand there are drills going on right in the same area. Some 3,000 U.S. military personnel, as well as American air, land, sea, and special operation components, have moved into the Persian Gulf region for a military exercise. The exercise, known as Eagle Resolve, has been taking place in Kuwaiti waters since March 8th and will run through the end of the month. U.S. forces and its military allies have practiced helicopter exercises such as ship-based search and seizure operations. Forces also will run exercises to execute amphibious landing along with the Kuwaitis. Interesting how they're doing this at the same exact moment that all of this is going on, and how they're trying to push through the authorization of war. Eagle Resolve is an excellent opportunity to improve our ability to partner with Gulf and international forces at the operational level and identify best practices in countering asymmetric threats. And this is coming from CENTCOM. So all of this is happening at the same exact time. They're training with the Kuwaitis. We know military assets are being brought into certain depots inside of Kuwaiti. Troops are being mounted up in this area, and now they're training in this area because, as we know, they're going to eventually need to go into Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, and Iraq. All they need is the authorization of war to be passed, and then boom, everything is a go. CIA Director Brennan is out there, and we mentioned this once before, that the leader of Iran's elite forces is contributing to instability in Iraq, complicating the U.S. mission against terrorism with his command of some of the Iraqi forces battling the Islamic State. Because right now what's happening is Iran is in there and they're destroying the proxy army of the United States, and they can't let this happen. And they're going to find out that, yeah, the Islamic State, wait a minute, this is not a terrorist group. These are paid mercenaries, and they're paid by the United States, Israel, UK. And this is what they're nervous about, because if you notice, all the countries in there are all those countries that are part of the private Western central banking system. All the other countries that would like to get involved, Syria, Russia, China, Iran, they've been told, no, you cannot do this. Now, if everyone is fighting terrorists, they should be allowed in there to help out, wouldn't you think? We see now that there is more propaganda out there. The U.S. Marine Corps urged vigilance among their staff on Sunday after the Islamic State militant group released a list of military personnel it aims to kill, as well as their photos, addresses, and everything else. And this came from the Islamic State hacking division, where they posted online list of U.S. military personnel who the group believed had taken part in attacks of the Islamic forces in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And we can see right now experts are out there saying that, yes, the Islamic State is recruiting experts in the field of information technology, and very likely they will hit the United States with some type of cyber attack. Now, we know that this is not exactly what's going on. We know this is an inside job. They're trying to push the propaganda as best they possibly can, because what do they want? They want the authorization for war passed. Now, we understand that all these countries have set up draconian laws because they're very worried about terrorism. Maybe not. Maybe they're really worried about the people and keeping control of the people for when the collapse comes, because we're starting to see a lot of the evidence where they're coming down on free speech and the rights of the people, and we see they've taken it a little bit further. I mean, it was just a matter of time before Western governments used the trumped-up war on terror as an excuse to drastically ratchet up their very real war on the use of cash and personal privacy that they were waging against on their own citizens. The terrorists used cash to purchase some of the stuff they needed. Cash! Oh, you know what we should do? We need to ban cash now. But of course, they also use cell phones, cars, public sidewalks. So we should ban all of that if you really believe the real story that there's terrorists out there. And what they're doing right now is they're trying to limit cash. The French finance minister was out there and he stated that it was necessary to fight against the use of cash in the French economy, because you can't trace it. You can't find all those people who are hiding their money, currency. So we're going to have to limit the amount of cash that people can take out. He then announced extreme and despotic measures to further restrict the use of cash by French residents and to spy and pry into their financial affairs. So basically right now the French residents, they can basically withdraw only 1,000 euros. It used to be 3,000. Before, French resident is free to convert euros into other currencies without having to show identity. But now, instead of basically converting their currency from 8,000 euros, they only can convert 1,000 euros. So we can see exactly what's going on here, and this is going to spread throughout all the other countries and the United States, because they're trying to limit the amount of money that people are taking out. Because you have to remember, their bail-in documents have been set. They want to trace basically all economic transactions. And they don't want people hiding money because they want all the money to remain in the banks. Basically, it's a form of capital controls if you really think about it. Now, we understand that the collapse is coming, and we understand that the United States government has been getting prepared. We know that they created DHS, they have TSA, they've been nationalizing the police force, they've been spying on all Americans. And we can see now they're having a massive military drill in the Midwest and Western area of the United States. These are going to be held in civilian areas. From July 15th to September 15th, the U.S. Army Special Operations Command is conducting a massive military drill in an area covering the entire American Southwest. Reading the operational plan of Jade Helm, it is clear that this drill is about controlling the people. Further, this drill is also about martial law being used as a preventative measure in states which might lean towards civil war against the United States government. California, Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. Hey, all these countries, except for California, I have to say, have very lax gun laws, if you noticed. Thomas Meade, the operations planner for the U.S. Army's Jade Helm Realistic Military Training, has publicly stated that we have Army Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Marines Special Operations Command, the 82nd Airborne Division, and we also have some of our interagency partners such as DEA, FBI, and DHS working with them. How interesting. Special operations groups include infrastructure raids, assassination of key enemy personnel, reconnaissance and extraction of key enemy personnel for detention and or intelligence gathering. And what makes me nervous about this is, what do they mean by detention and intelligence gathering and assassination? I mean, are they talking about pushing the agenda of using the lists and going after those key people and detaining them and dragging them off? Or assassinating them? In the Jade Helm section entitled What to Expect, operation planners state that the public should anticipate increased aircraft in the area at night. The same section goes on to state that some individual civilian insurgents may conduct suspicious activities. Well, the question is, what do you mean by suspicious activities? Are you talking about taking people, rounding them up, and bringing them off to separate FEMA camps? Or taking people, putting hoods over them, and dragging them off? So, if we look at each one of these states, the red states of Utah and Texas are listed as hostile states and is part of the Southern California. The brown state of New Mexico is listed as leaning towards being hostile. The blue states of California, Nevada, and Colorado are listed as being loyal, permissive to military authority and martial law. The light blue states of Arizona is listed as unknown but leaning toward being friendly. So we can see right now they have it all mapped out. They're doing these trainings. They're already warning the people there's going to be aircraft, most likely black helicopters flying in the area. And this is all being done in civilian areas. And we can see all of this is being done to train the people to be used to this type of what's going to happen here so they don't react. Because when the collapse does come, and they've seen these drills before, we've seen it in Miami, we see it in Houston, and as people get used to this, they're not going to react. They're not going to think that there's anything wrong. They're just going to think, oh, it's another drill, no big deal. And those people who might be having conversations, who've been spied on, saying, I don't agree with the government, they might be taken away, and they won't be ready for it because they're used to these drill operations. And we can see they are definitely getting ready for the collapse scenario. And this tells us that this collapse of the entire economic system is coming very, very soon. I mean, this is a massive drill that they're doing at this point in time, and we can see that all other countries, the whole thing is falling apart at this time. And it seems like they are definitely getting ready. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.